Support WrestleTalk!
Be kind to each other in the comments.
Have WWE fixed the Alexa Bliss character? I am Luke Owen, and I'm joined by El Fakador, Laurie Blake, and we're here to talk about Hell in a Cell 2021. This is the podcast review of that show, which was a show, I guess. It was... I've already done my 10-minute review of it, and at the end of it I was like, well, it was a pointless show where very little was actually achieved. So before we get into the Alexa Bliss stuff, do you want to give some sort of overall thoughts on the show?
Mania. What was the point in this show? What was the point in bringing Hell in a Cell forward as well? I think it's the other thing that I haven't heard many people discussing is like, why did they move Hell in a Cell from October to be like, we must do it now? We've got so much on, and it's like, and then then obviously Roman ends up moving on to Friday. So the whole Hell in a Cell premise felt completely superfluous to what was going on here. And then they just really crapped a bunch of the finishes up the wall for no apparent reason.
And like a lot of the stuff that's on this show, we're just going to get more of the same. Like, it felt like there was only one feud that really had an end on here, which was Bobby Drew. And even then, it didn't have like a definitive ending.
I think it's sad as well because like there was good stuff in here. I think that's the thing is like there was really good wrestling on this show. Like a lot of the matches, like Cesaro Seth was great, KO Zayn was great, Drew and Lashley was wicked right until that last moment. Like there was really good stuff here, but because of the way it's packaged and the way it was presented, it's not enough. I just didn't care enough. Like, and I think that's the other thing is like those really brilliant matches right in the middle of the card are filler. Ultimately, they're there because something else moved. So it's harder even to get invested at that point because there is no real build going into this beyond leaning back on years and years of drama between like Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. But that's like, it's the equivalent of like tracksuit bottoms in terms of wrestling. It's comfy, it's comfortable. You know what you're getting when you're wearing them. Like that's what you get with Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. But it doesn't really light me up to think like, oh, we're just going to watch that again.
Well, please do give this channel a subscribe if you haven't already, and also press that thumbs up button. Looking at the stats at the moment, 10% of you have pressed the thumbs up button that are watching. So why don't the other 90% of you get off your thumbs and press the thumbs up button? I don't want to say get off your.
So you're going to go pull your thumbs out of you and press.
There it is. Yes, that's the one. Thank you, Laurie. It's a good job you're here. Right. Well, let's talk about Alexa Bliss because So I was trying to think, like, what do we call this video? What do we talk about here? And people want to talk about the Alexa Bliss stuff. So I go, cool, we'll look at that. And I was like, well, can I take a new perspective on this? And then I thought, okay, the Alexa Bliss character that we've had since she aligned herself with The Fiend and has now become this new spooky version of Alexa Bliss, her matches have always been pre-taped ones. Like they pre-taped it so that you don't do it live in front of the Thunderdome. So you can do things like lighting rigs falling from the sky, or as she's done on Raw a couple of times, change her costume mid-match. Like literally in the blink of an eye, change her costume into her old Alexa Bliss gear to kind of like psych out her opponent, or it's the black goo or things like that, which is fine when it's in the Thunderdome and you can pre-tape a match. This pay-per-view is the last of the Thunderdome era. From July onward, from Money in the Bank onward, we're back in front of fans. So WWE had to find a way to adapt the Alexa Bliss character so that it's still the same Bliss and she's still doing spooky magical nonsense, but it's stuff that they can do live in front of fans. And the way they've got round that, it appears to be, is mind control and hypnosis. Now, I'm not saying it's good because I don't particularly like it. It's not for me. But I can't deny that this is the most I've enjoyed the Alexa Bliss character since this whole thing, because at least she actually did some wrestling in this match.
Yeah, you can give her that for sure. She did some wrestling. I mean, the rest of it was absolute gubbins, wasn't it? But yeah, I think this is I don't think these kind of things work without a lot of effects and a lot of production in that sense. Like these kind of spooky things just don't work in front of a live crowd. The live crowd is going to eat that alive when that happens in front of them. When people start getting hypnotized and people aren't going to be making the noise, the brilliance of the Thunderdome is you can play whatever noise you want for the crowd. You can make them You can tell them what to do in the little window that they're watching in, and you can then also press noises to be like, "Ooh, they're all like, whoa!" Everyone's going to be pissing themselves laughing when this stuff happens, and WWE is going to drop it like it is hot because it is not going to get over in front of the crowd, and I bet you that.
Well, yeah, it also raises a lot of questions. Denise pointed this out on the Fightful podcast. If Alexa Bliss can mind control people, because she did in this match, she mind controlled Shayna Baszler to let go of a hold that she had onto her. Like, she failed her wisdom saving throw and she had to release the hold.
She was charmed.
She
wasn't. She's not a half elf. That's the problem.
Well, that or she's not a level 9 monk either, where she can't be charmed or frightened, and or maybe it's level 10. Anyway, also she mind controlled Nia Jax on the outside to slap Reginald. Like, literally, like Alexa raised up her hand and Nia was mirroring everything that she did, and then she slapped Reginald in the face. But as Denise pointed out in the Fightful review, why didn't she just mind control Shayna Baszler to lie on the ground so she could pin her?
Yes, yeah. I mean, this is the thing. All of these things need a bit more through. Like, there needs to be a logical through line to every decision that characters make in these kind of stories, and that was completely illogical to be like, I've already mind controlled Shayna Baszler to make her drop a hold, but then obviously like Shayna Baszler broke out of it by going like, no. Then she mind controls Jax. It's like, doesn't get Jax to come in and interfere. Like, she could have had Jax come in and hit her as well, which would have then caused a DQ, and she would have like. There's many options that Alexa Bliss could have gone with here, and it doesn't make any sense to be like, okay, well, we'll just continue having a match, and then also to do all this mind control stuff as like the distraction. But while she's mind controlling Nia Jax, Shayna Baszler sneaks up behind her and puts on the Kirifuda clutch. And Bliss just gets out of that without any magic. Bliss just suddenly goes like, "Oh, MMA is it? Nah, don't need that. Here's the finish." Like what is the story here? Because like for a bit, the story was that Shayna Baszler is dealing out all of this damage to Bliss. She's like breaking her arm, and Bliss is just laughing it off and doing all that kind of weird contorted crawl that she was doing. And then it's about like, oh, Bliss starts to ramp up the spookiness. And then, at the end, it's just, they just flip back on to like, no, actually, Bliss is just a good wrestler. So there you go. That's the end. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
The finish. The finish.
I'm trying to put some positive onto this. And that is like, I enjoyed Alexa Bliss's like, her actually doing some wrestling and being more physical and being more like aggressive. Like she was doing a lot more shouting, a lot more violent, which is why I think I enjoyed her performance more here than I did, say, in the Randy Orton match or any of the Asuka matches or the stuff that she was doing with Nikki Cross prior to that. But like, dude, the hypnosis stuff. Someone actually, I've just the comment that someone posted up that said, even spooky bollocks needs rules. Like, and that's the thing here. You need like consistency with this, and I don't feel like a lot of this has consistency. They also not dropped the Lily stuff, but there was no Lily involvement in this match, despite the fact that Lily was like the key component of this feud. That's what the whole thing has been built around. So I feel like they're trying to sort of box Alexa Bliss into this, a mold where they're like, this is something that we can put out in front of the live crowd. However, as we saw at WrestleMania, there is every chance that a live crowd that you cannot control, like you were saying earlier, is just going to boo this out of the building and be like, absolutely not. We don't want this.
I think that's the thing, is like the presentation. I think Alexa Bliss does an amazing job with the stuff that she's given. I think she sells it really well. I think she's a really good promo. I thought like the sort of screaming bits that she did with Nia Jax, like she made hypnosis as a concept. Like, look at how the Demon Head Master did hypnosis. You have to like do like flashing eyes and all that kind of stuff. Like there's a lot that you have to add to it to like make it work. And I think she managed to sell it here with just like a look. And maybe the production was pretty good on the kind of cutting back and forth between Nia and then them screaming at each other and copying each other. That kind of thing was quite well done. I just don't think a live crowd is going to like it. And I just think there needs to be more to Bliss's character than just, what does she want? Like, what's she trying to achieve? All of this stuff. How is she going to win these matches? Like, if she's impervious to pain, why is she basically then turning around and cheating to win? Do you know what I mean? Like, and this was a massive case of like too many cooks, as well. Like, it was, why was Nia and Reggie there? Like, just unnecessary additions to this match.
the whole thing with Shayna at the moment is that she hates Reginald. She doesn't like. She literally had a match with Reginald a couple of weeks ago on TV. She doesn't like them. So all of a sudden you're like, well, why are they out there with you then? Like, why are you getting a promo backstage with them? Why aren't you more mad that they're at ringside? And like, also,
because they were props. Because they were props for the spookiness, Luke. That's the point, right?
But then, but there's no like character in there. Then is there? No. They're literally just props on the outside. And this boils my piss more than it probably should do. But Shayna Baszler just doing a regular entrance, like, well, what was the point of the stuff with Lily and the mirror and all that then? Because clearly that's not affected you in any way, shape, or form. You were terrified at the time. 2 weeks later, it means clearly nothing to you. So what was the point of it all? And if Baszler isn't selling any of that in her entrance, and she isn't afraid to get in the ring with Bliss, then is Bliss a scary character to be in the ring with?
Well, yeah, and then you've got that kind of like the addition of the commentary saying like, oh, it's not affecting Bliss, and Bliss is screaming like as Shayna Baszler is doing all of these moves. It is just really baffling to be like, I think horror is really hard to do in general. Like, it's hard to beyond just going boo, like when no one's expecting it. It's hard to make people legitimately scared or to legitimately feel like something supernatural is doing, because that's an extra layer of suspension of disbelief than even just watching wrestling and being like, they're actually having a fight. So WWE can barely make me believe in wrestling. How are they going to make me believe in spooky Alexa Bliss when, you know, most of it is just in full daylight crawling around on the floor? Like, she was doing that crawl where she puts her legs over her arms, and it's like, yeah, cool, neat trick, but like doesn't look as terrifying as you think it does. Or as WWE clearly think it's like, whoa.
So kind of to answer the question that we posed at the start of this, have WWE fixed the Alexa Bliss character? Spooky nonsense has always been a part of wrestling. Like, you know, Papa Shango, Taker, Kane, the Boogeyman, like even like, you know, Mordecai and all this stuff. Like, we've always had spooky characters in wrestling. Some work, Undertaker, Kane. Some don't. Pretty much everyone else. But like, I think that there is something in here that could work in terms of like, you know, the more physical side of Alexa Bliss, the more aggressive side of her character. I don't know if the hypnosis stuff is going to get over with the crowd, though.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing about the Alexa Bliss character is the feeling that she might be possessed. And the few times they've done that, like she suddenly snaps back and it's like the old Alexa Bliss is like in the ring going, what the hell's going on? That's when it really works. That's when it's really interesting. And that's when you don't have to do much more than like she can shrug off a few attacks and then she wrestles. It's the more and more stuff they're adding to it where they're like, oh, we've got all these ideas for all these spooky things that she can do. She can do hypnosis and telekinesis, and blooming black goo will run down her face or whatever it is. She can throw a fireball, blah, blah. Like, when you add more and more and more and more to it, that's when it goes too far. And I think stripping it right back into just like the thing that will work in front of a crowd, I think, is this idea that she's possessed. And then there is an Alexa Bliss. There is the babyface Alexa Bliss trapped in there somewhere. That's really interesting. That's easy to sell. There'll be nice moments in matches where you can have the other Alexa come out and people will respond to that, I think. But yeah, I think going too far into the magic is just a way of turning people off this product.
Well, let's see what you've got to say about this and the rest of the show in the Ultrachats. Please do subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Thank you to the 1,200 people that are watching this stream and to the near 300 of you that have pulled your thumb out and pressed the thumbs up button. So do it again if you haven't already. Homer Star fan said, I thought the pay-per-view was mediocre. The matches were fine, but I felt it was hard to care. Bayley Belair was good, but they hardly used the sell, which took me out of it. The 50-50 booking of Rollins and Cesaro and Owens and Zayn annoyed me as well. Bacon Rasher said, thanks for watching so we don't have to. Sounds like hell and an out of the cell to watch. Most of the match quality may have been good, but I've seen it all already. Seen it done better. Poor Fiend, Baszler, Cesaro, and the rest of the talent. LIW and new. Oh, we'll get to that. Eduardo says, hey guys, you know that everything is perfectly legal inside Hell in a kind of square box structure? Also, Drew needs to turn heel. I don't know if turning Drew heel's the answer here. Sending him to SmackDown, maybe, like for a fresh set of people to face against, I think is a much better answer. But yeah, we'll get to the Drew stuff when we get to the main event, but I don't know if turning him heel is the answer here.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think maybe I think he's in need of a refresh, and a heel is at least a good way to have some losses. Whereas they seem quite obsessed with him winning otherwise. So
I have seen a few people make the suggestion that because he can't challenge now for the title, is that he goes into Money in the Bank and he wins the Money in the Bank briefcase, and that is like a contractual loophole in him not being able to challenge for the belt anymore.
But then it just means we're straight back to Drew challenging for the belt, which is not what we want. Like, the benefit of this stipulation is the fact that we don't get Drew challenging for the belt. And that means they actually have to come up with something new.
Gary says, do you think that the Bobby Drew stipulation, here we go, actually is leading to Drew winning Money in the Bank to get the title shot down the line? Sorry, Gary, I should have read ahead to your question, your statement there. But yeah, no, I think it possibly works, but we were just saying at the top of this show, the one benefit of the Bobby Drew match is that has put a pin in that, like, unlike any of the other matches on this card, that match have actually put a pin into that feud and said, cool, we're moving on to something new. Him winning Money in the Bank takes that pin out. All of the things fall down and like it actually makes none of this pay-per-view worthwhile.
No, it also just doesn't it doesn't make any sense as well to be like, you can't chat, like then you're just getting into contractual law, and that is not fun. That is not fun television to be like, which of these two things, which one outranks the other one? How dull.
Matthew McFadden, regardless of your thoughts on the character itself, Bliss smashes it out of the park from an acting point of view. Surprised we haven't seen the fake arm injury spot. I feel like it might suit the character more. Can't help but feel sorry for Bray. We actually said on the show last night, we thought she was going to do the arm break thing.
Yeah, they did. Well, they did a little bit of. They played a little bit with that double jointedness, didn't they? Where she did that was part of the crawl, I think, and that was the bit where Baszler was bending her arm behind her back, and obviously, like, could turn it much further than usual without really hurting Bliss. But yeah, I thought the break would have been quite cool to do, and then you could have had to like snap it back almost.
Yeah. Dean Barretton says, you forget how good Bliss is with all this spooky magic power nonsense. It's nice to see her wrestle, but still not for me in terms of character work. Surely Bliss will just use her powers on the crowd to make them cheer her, Jedi mind trick style. That's a good idea. Yeah, there it is. That's the winning idea right there. Right.
Try telling a wrestling crowd what to do. I dares you.
Let's get into the show itself. Shout out to SP3 from True Heel Heat, who was in the chats with them. And I just wanted to read out this comment that they posted up here. This was the first main roster pay-per-view in a while that had a truly deflating feeling. Wrestling usually overcomes the creative, but not this time. I think that is a really apt way to describe this show, which was that absolutely not a lot of it mattered. And while the in-ring action was good, every time a match ended, I was like, eh.
I think that's the thing. WWE, like it's so obvious now. And I think, these comments of Vince saying that he knows the product is stale coming out, like, it's become quite obvious that the wheels are just spinning on what's happening in WWE until fans come back. And I think we all thought that very early last year, going all the way through. And now it is just becoming so plainly obvious that every single time we come to a pay-per-view, we're just getting the same old stuff over and over again. And there are only a few standout matches and stories going on in all of WWE's products. And that is because clearly Roman has quite a long through line of like plot that they've come up with. And that is maybe planned for the next 6 months or whatever it is. And that is the only thing that is planned that far ahead. And everything else just feels like, what are we going to do? I don't know. We'll just do Cesaro and Seth again. Great.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Not enough, man.
And and there was a lot of times on this show when we were saying, like, what is next for these characters? And, the plans at the moment, as far as like reports are saying, is that SummerSlam, it's Roman versus Cena for the Blue Universal Championship. And they would love to do Bobby versus Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship, both of which huge headlining matches, like Roman Cena, Bobby Brock. Those are two massive, massive matches. A much larger problem from that, though, is that they are both part-time stars and legends that you have brought in to try and make a card seem bigger than it is with the stars that you have, which means then you have spent the last 18 months of this pandemic era not building anyone. You haven't built a single star in any of this time. You've actively not made anyone feel special and important. So when fans come back, the first thing you do is pick up the phone and be like, John, can you come in? Brock, can you come in? Rock, can you come in? Edge, can you come in? Because we need some star power on the show because we don't have any at the moment.
Yeah, it baffles me as well, because it's also like, things like the releases recently. We're talking about what's going to happen after Bobby Drew. The last person who was in the main event scene got released, Braun Strowman. Like, the person they were building an interesting, intriguing story with on SmackDown, Aleister Black, got released. Like, all the work they have also done, they have undone. So it's like, it is mind-boggling what has gone on in wrestling. Because, someone like Cesaro should realistically feel like a really big main event star by now, because he's been on the rise throughout the last year, and he should have somewhere to go that isn't just slotting back into a feud with Seth Rollins. Like, we've done that. We did. Yeah. This is the thing as well, doing all this stuff immediately after WrestleMania, but we've also just had WrestleMania Redux, or Backlash as it's known. Like, it just feels really kind of pathetic that this is what they could come up with for the card.
Yeah, I mean, we on the pre-show we had Mandy Rose versus Natalya, and it was perfectly fine kickoff show stuff. Natalya picked up the win. They'll probably do a rematch of this on Raw, or maybe Tamina versus the other one to build to the eventual tag match that we'll get, and then they'll probably lose that one, Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke, that is, and then we'll just do rematches. Like, this is basically like Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke are a team that are just there to challenge for the tag titles and never win them, and we'll just keep doing it ad infinitum.
Yeah, I just don't like pre-show matches where it doesn't make you excited to watch the show. And this was one of those. Like, Mandy Rose is still looks like she's always waiting for the next spot. Yeah, and that is that is a problem, because this just felt like it was moving in slow motion at times. It was really, really crawling. And I think Natty's great, but you just want to see something done with these tag titles. And we've immediately, we did a big change because we needed to do something with them. And then we've immediately gone back into a holding pattern. And it's so indicative of everything going on in WWE right now.
But so really, to put a massive positive on our chat here, this opening match on the main card was an absolute banger. This was far and away the best thing on the show, because not only did the characters really work within the match, the wrestling itself in the match was excellent. The stipulation really added to the drama within the match. The finish ruled, and we kind of know where we're going with our winner. Maybe not so much for our loser, but we certainly know where we're going for our winner. Bianca Belair versus Bayley. This match, I mean, I know, you and I were very much praising it during last night's stream, but, you've had a bit of time to sleep on it now. How did you feel about this match?
I really like it. I think the sell didn't come into it enough to really warrant. I think adding the sell was a good stipulation, but they didn't really utilize it more so than just it felt just a very regular hardcore match. And I think sometimes Bayley's creativity, like with the kendo sticks in the Banks one from last year, lets her down, because actually they're quite slow to set up. But I like the callback with the kendo sticks. They're pre-taped this time. She's shouting at Michael Cole. But and the hair tying stuff, fun and inventive, but takes a little bit too long sometimes to sort of set up and do. But otherwise, I thought these two work incredibly well together. I think Bayley's character is the best it's ever been. I think she's so good now. She's for having struggled to ever transition from face to heel to suddenly be so locked in as this fully formed character who's just the perfect annoying Karen of WWE. And then Bianca Belair gets this kind of big showpiece match to be there's so few women that have ever fought inside a Hell in a Cell. To be one of them and be the SmackDown Women's Champion to walk out with it is a massive deal, really. And it puts her in that upper echelon of women who've ever existed in WWE, I think. And this year had everything going for it, and had a good finish with the kind of KOD onto the ladder. That was something I've never seen before, with the ladder open as well. Oh, good stuff all around.
Really enjoyed that finish. It really puts Belair over strong, which we're speculating. I personally think we're leading into a SummerSlam rematch against Sasha Banks. So like
That's
because it was such a huge deal for WrestleMania. So like for having fans back again and putting that as like, you know, one of the big marquee matches of SummerSlam weekend, I think that'd be a really smart move on their part. I don't know where you go with Bayley after this one or what you do with Belair at Money in the Bank. What I hope they don't do is just Belair Bayley 3. Because I don't think that's going to help anyone whatsoever. But yeah, I do think we're heading towards Banks for SummerSlam at the very least.
Yeah, I think Bayley, you'd probably just put in the women's ladder match, and that's what I would do with her for Money in the Bank. I think she'd be a really good addition. Like she's the sort of person that can hold that match together as well. Like she could run that show from inside the ring. Belair, I don't know who could challenge really. Like Carmella.
There's no one else. Yeah. Well, yeah. Again, you do Carmella. Yeah, but like, there's no one else on the SmackDown roster, is there? Like, you could do Liv Morgan, I guess, for like a week or something like that. But she just lost her most recent match, so it doesn't feel like she's really in that position. Maybe you just don't do a Belair match at Money in the Bank. Like, you just put all the focus instead on the women's ladder match.
Yeah, I would. That's how I would do it. To be fair, I would literally take that championship out of the picture for that. And especially if you're going to do Banks returning, and then potentially winning the ladder match or something like that to set up a match at SummerSlam could be a really cool way of doing it if you didn't want to then use the briefcase for the rest of the year. But Bayley with the briefcase is always fun, to be fair. So I think Bayley could pick up the briefcase here, and then she's also got something to do with that. It just feels like, there's too few stars at all these kind of title picture levels to be like, I think that's the kind of question raised by this show in general, is that when someone wins a match, you're like, okay, well, what next for the champion? Because there's no one else to step into the picture.
Early doors, I'm putting down my money. Nikki Cross is going to win the women's Money in the Bank ladder match. And she's this year's version of Otis, where it's just like, I can't believe that Nikki Cross won the do, and then they'll never actually have her cash it, and then she'll probably just lose to someone else.
What if it's Doudrop though?
Oh,
what if it's Viper?
Yes. Oh, I love that even more. If Doudrop wins it, I'd love that. Absolutely love it. I'm the only person in the world who likes this storyline, but it's me and Vince are the only people who like it. Okay, we had our first WrestleMania rematch of the night: Seth Rollins versus Cesaro. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, it's Rollins versus Cesaro. Guess what? They're really good together in ring. They had a really good in-ring wrestling match, but by the end of this, Rollins wins with the small package, and this feud must continue when this feud doesn't need to continue.
It really felt like WrestleMania was the end of this, and like now what do we do with this as well? Because like Seth being obsessed that Cesaro wasn't on his level, and then Cesaro gets this win, and then that causes Seth to be more obsessed. Good story. That's really fun. But then then Seth gets this like roll up win. So is Seth now not bothered anymore because he got the win, or is he going to start provoking Cesaro, or does Cesaro now care because Seth got the roll up? Like, yeah, you'd hope that they'd move on, but that doesn't feel like a satisfying enough conclusion to this story between these two guys. Like WrestleMania was the finish. Yeah. So exactly. that should have just not touched it from that point. But I don't know. Like,
not a satisfying end.
I would happily watch them do that match more like every other month, essentially. But there needs to be some story going into it, or that should have been the kickoff show match. Like, kickoff show is a perfect place to have that match, like, because it's just to get you excited about the wrestling, and you just see some wrestling, and 90% of the time the commentators are just talking gubbins over the top of it. Like, it's fun to watch, but trying to make it into this bigger thing, and like they try to do these few poignant moments where like Cesaro really like tore it up on Seth for ages, and then takes his glove off, puts it in his mouth, and then like boots it out of the ring in this big like symbolic gesture that just felt flat a bit. But yeah, and Michael Cole screaming at the end of this when Seth wins with the small package, he stole that victory. It's like, no, he locked in a wrestling hold and he won fair and square. Like, he didn't steal anything. So that like then makes Cesaro feel really rubbish, because you got Michael Cole screaming about something that's perfectly legal. I really do think that this feud is just going to continue, and they'll do a rematch. Maybe it'll be on SmackDown. Maybe they'll do a rematch maybe they'll even do a rematch at SummerSlam. But like, I feel like there's no story left in this tank, but that is not going to stop them having another match. Well, that's the thing. It feels like the story at the end of this is, Cesaro tries to lock in the sharpshooter and Seth won't tap and he gets out of it. So he locks in a crossface and Seth won't tap. So he goes back to the sharpshooter and Seth won't tap and rolls into this roll up. So like Cesaro trying multiple things and he was like stomping the arm as well and all that kind of stuff towards the end. Like when he got riled up, that's when Seth took the opportunity to take the things. Like, that's great, but that is the build to the WrestleMania match. That is not the build to a rematch of the WrestleMania match, of the rematch of the Hell in a Cell match.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the third match in the story. We then got the Alexa Bliss, Shayna Baszler stuff that we've already spoken about. Then we got another WrestleMania rematch of Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens. It's not really a hell of a lot of good story going into this. Felt like we had kind of put a pin in this after WrestleMania, and yet here we are a few months later still doing it. Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens. But you know what? It was another this was a really, really good match. But at the end of it, Sami Zayn wins. Mm-hmm. And so cool. This feud continues as well. Spinning wheels is the best way to describe WWE at the moment. The report is that that came out over the weekend is that Vince is aware that the product is stale and that nothing feels important at the moment, but they're just holding on. They're holding on until fans come back. So they just don't want to do anything. So they're just playing it safe by doing Rollins versus Cesaro because you can fill 15 minutes on a card with that. Owens versus Zayn because you can fill 15 minutes on a card with that. But with both of the heels winning in those matches, it has completely undone all of the stuff you did at WrestleMania and in the months afterwards. And now we're just back to square one again. So we are just perpetually going nowhere. And that is incredibly frustrating as a wrestling fan to watch a product that is actively not trying.
Well, yeah, and it just didn't feel like there were any particular stakes in this. This felt like it should have been really hyped up as whoever wins this goes after Apollo Crews, right? That should have been the big thing. And it's here you can see a way in which they could really finagle either guy to go after Apollo, because Zayn goes, I beat Owens. Owens goes, I took the Nigerian nail and that ruined my match with Sami, so I'm after you, Apollo. And then they're just inevitably going to do a triple threat, aren't they? And so we're just seeing Owens and Zayn in the same match again. It's a shame because actually, like I said earlier, this is the sweatpants of wrestling matches. It's so good and so comfy to watch, and so you're this is the height of the art form. These two guys have amazing chemistry. They work together so well. They make it look bloody effortless. And then they do something like that. Sami Zayn does his dive to the outside, hits Owens in the shoulder, and Owens sells it like it's a shoot injury. Better than I think I've ever seen anyone sell a sort of bump on the shoulder, because he runs over to the timekeepers and he's looking almost for a medic, and he goes and talks to the referee quite privately. And I'm sure he probably also was genuinely hurt there, but it felt like a moment in the match, and then it became the focus for Sami as well for a lot of the rest of the match. So they were doing this kind of dual throat-based offense, as we were calling it last night, and then shoulder-based offense. I just think these two guys are fantastic. And it's a shame that neither of them ever seem to now just reach, they're just capped at a point where they're not champions, but they are just constantly featured. And it's now is the time with either of them to just put a belt on them and do something with them, because you keep featuring them because you like them. So do something, make something of them.
The Owens sell was, we all bought it. Totally bought it, hook, line, and sphincter, that was a legit injury. We were totally oh man, and they showed the replay again, and he doesn't say, and he catches him right in the shoulder, and it was a proper, oh man, that sucks for them, because he's on he's trying to get some momentum going here. This is gonna, and just completely got worked by it, and I absolutely loved that, and I think it added a lot to the match, because he already went in with the throat injury from the Nigerian spike, or the Nigerian nail. Mm-hmm. So he he was coughing.
The iguanodon thumb.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Press the thumbs up while you're here as well. Give this video, pull it out, and give this video a Nigerian nail. And it was. I loved how those two things came together, particularly as it built into the finish, because it was into the arm, into the ropes against the throat, so you could do the haluva kick. So much of this is good, but it's not the third match in this feud, a feud that ended at WrestleMania. And so we're back to that whole thing of just, we're just spinning wheels and we're not actually going anywhere. We are just going around in circles and we're waiting until fans come back. So again, great selling, great in-ring action, great fire from the guys, but none of it really matters.
Yeah, I think that's and I think that's probably a particular problem with SmackDown at the moment as well, is because Roman is not going anywhere as the Universal Champion, and now it feels like they've set Apollo up to be so dominant with Commander Aziz as well that he's not going anywhere. So it just leaves the rest of the card in these weird feuds that just go round and round in circles because they haven't worked out the ends of blood feuds. They're just being like, okay, and that feud ends, and then now what do we do? Oh, well, we've got these 4 people, so we'll just do the other combination, or we'll just do them again, I guess. We'll do them again, whatever.
Yeah, it's a real shame. We got a recap of the Roman versus Rey match that happened on SmackDown, and then we got Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte Flair. Man, I feel like I'm a broken record here. This was really good in-ring wrestling. This was really good character work. Maybe not from Rhea Ripley, but it was really good character work from Charlotte Flair. They had a lot of fire. Bloody, bloody, blah, bloody, bloody, blah. The finish absolutely sucked. The finish to this match absolutely sucked. If you haven't seen it, it was really building to this great crescendo, right? Because you had Rhea Ripley hit the riptide, but she was too close to the ropes. So Charlotte, the veteran, was able to get to the ropes. And then Charlotte locks in the figure 4. But Rhea Ripley, the everlasting baby face, the never give up attitude, wouldn't tap out to it. And then they brawled to the outside. And Rhea Ripley grabbed the top of the announcer's desk, that plastic bit on the announcer's desk. You know, the one that Randy Orton keeps dropping people on.
Mm-hmm.
And she sort of lifted it up and it seemingly fell out of her hands and hit Charlotte in the face. And the referee went, DQ.
Yeah.
That was it. And so Charlotte won by DQ and Rhea Ripley retained her championship and then celebrated like she won. This sucked massively.
Yeah, this was just baffling booking. This is WWE tying itself in knots about who needs to look strong and when. If you can't work it out, don't book the bloody match, is what I say. If you cannot fathom how to make Charlotte look strong and Rhea not lose a championship, don't do the match, don't book it, because it's not worth it. Because it just goes to show, I think most people are so pissed off at the finish that they've forgotten how good the wrestling was. In no way is this, I think, as we've said about all these other WrestleMania rematches, they were all missing that dimension that WrestleMania missed. And this is obviously a WrestleMania rematch from last year, and it is missing that extra dimension of Rhea's character was at the strongest it's ever been last year when this match happened. Rhea was the NXT champion. Charlotte went down like a douchebag and was like, I'm so good, I'm going to win this belt again. Ha ha ha. And then sorry, I'm going to win it for the first time. And then Rhea says, Rhea as the babyface just won't give up and is going to fight this veteran. Here, it just felt like Charlotte was schooling Rhea, who was not quite babyface enough to really pull off that kind of dynamic. Charlotte was the same sort of character that she was last year, and it just wasn't gelling quite as well. They've got chemistry. They've got brilliant chemistry, and I think they do wonderful stuff in the ring together. And I think Charlotte's character is fantastic. But yeah, Rhea was just missing that little bit to make it really sing. And then you get to the end, and what did it do for either woman? That finish. What does that DQ do? Because that makes Rhea look like a chump for doing something stupid when she's she reversed the polarity on the figure 4. She rolled over to get out of it. So Charlotte was locked in the other way. She then rolls out of the ring and hits her with the thing, gets DQ'd, and is has a 5-minute conversation with the referee where he's like, "Oh, you got DQ'd." Then she takes Charlotte back into the ring and hits all of her moves to end the match. She goes back in and does the riptide clean, basically. Mm-hmm. And Charlotte also just doesn't look like she can really pull anything off because she couldn't make this. She was schooling Rhea for a lot of the match, and she couldn't pull it off. She couldn't win. So who comes out looking strong here? Nobody.
Yeah, this did no favors for anyone. And then
that's the only reason you do that finish. It's the only reason you do the finish is to try and make people look strong, and it doesn't work. Exactly. So just let Rhea win, for God's sake.
And because we get DQs on TV all the time, getting a DQ on a pay-per-view as well just feels like an extra level of just like, F you guys. Like, stop. Like, this is a complete was wasting our time. Because this match went like 14 minutes or whatever it was. And if you're just going to do this DQ finish, it may as well have gone 90 seconds. You didn't need to do 14 minutes of this. And I credit to Ripley and Flair, because they like someone like a Scott Hall or a Kevin Nash or a Hogan, if they'd have found out like, oh, you're going to go out there and do 15 minutes and then it's going to end in a DQ finish with this, they'd have probably gone like, I ain't giving you 100%. Like, you are getting 20% at best out of me. But these went out there and they still gave it 100%. So absolutely credit to them. They worked, everyone on this card worked their asses off. The booking was against them. They all worked their asses off to try and make it work. But this was a frustrating experience as a fan because like, cool. It's a rematch. It was, we basically had this match at WrestleMania Backlash. We got it here. DQ finish. That means we're just going to get a bunch more crap of this on Raw, and we're just going to get another match of it again down the line. So once again, nothing is moving forwards.
But also, it's insulting, that finish, because do you think we're friggin' stupid? Do you think we've not watched wrestling before? We've all signed up to watch this bloody pay-per-view. We've paid to watch this. So, like, you would think we might have watched Raw or SmackDown leading into it and have seen wrestling. So we've seen people be hit with that bit of the bloody table over and over again and not get a DQ. So why is it suddenly like, what we're saying is spooky stuff has to have rules. Regular wrestling has to have rules, and they have to be consistent, because otherwise you can't bloody monitor what's going on, can you? Like, it just makes you feel stupid for investing 14 minutes to have a finish that you're like, that doesn't even make sense. Like, and you must know booking that match that doesn't make any sense. Like, it didn't make sense from a character perspective. It doesn't make sense from a reality of wrestling perspective. It's stupid.
Yeah, this finish absolutely sucked. And like, I think this really, on a show as well that already had the aura of like, none of this really matters, man, this took the wind out of sails. And I think that actually really hurt the start of the main event of Bobby Lashley versus Drew McIntyre for the WWE Championship inside Hell in a Cell, because they're now working against this sort of like negative perception that people have got about this show. And credit to them. Holy hell. These two went hell for bloody leather and battered the absolute piss out of each other. There was welts all over them. They was going through tables. They were going through this. They were going through that. They were hitting each other with all sorts of plunder. I absolutely loved this match so much. And then it had a finish that absolutely sucked. And it once again just burst that balloon, and everyone just gets deflated once again. And it totally warped a lot of people's perception of this show.
I think this is maybe reading too much into it, but it feels like WWE's approach to a lot of the pandemic booking has been, you get 15 minutes, go out there and do your match for 15 minutes. Just, hey, Daniel Bryan, hey, whoever, go do your match for 15 minutes. And then we will tell you what the last 30 seconds is. And that is what happens. And it just like, there is this actual clunk as the WWE airlifts the finish in to this like brilliant bit of stuff. So boom, there you go, a load of bollocks. And this was it. Because even the sort of stuff that felt like very rote in this kind of Lashley Drew stuff where like MVP does get involved, look, he's got inside the cage, he gets involved, had a really brilliant twist on it, because he gets in, he pulls the referee off, and you have that moment where it's like, so MVP's got involved, and then they lock him in the cage, and you had this brilliant stare down where Drew's like gets out of the ring and like gets right in MVP's face. Fantastic stuff. But the problem is, because that WWE, you can hear the chopper coming in. Here comes the finish. That WWE are going to do something absolutely crap with MVP right at the finish of this match. And so you're just sitting there like tensed for that moment where you're like, and this is going to fall apart, isn't it? This is going to disappoint me. And again, like in the Charlotte Rhea match, what does this do for either man? Like, what does this do for Bobby? Like, if Bobby is going to go on to face Brock Lesnar, if that is your plan, Brock Lesnar is going to be returning as Brock Lesnar. He's the bloody beast, right? Like, Bobby should be looking as strong as possible, because then you've got a clash of the Titans, not a clash of the Sneak and one Titan. Yeah. Drew losing out on the ability to challenge for the title on what is essentially the cheapest of cheap wins. This should have felt like, we were talking about this beforehand, before we came on, like, You should just, I don't know, if nothing matters, smash the Hurt Business back together. Who gives a crap? Like, just have Shelton and Cedric come out and beat the hell out of Drew in the cage, and then Bobby locks in the Hurt Lock, Drew passes out, Bobby retains. At least then Drew has some reason to be like, man, I'm livid about this. Being livid over the fact that MVP grabbed your leg and you got rolled up doesn't feel, it just doesn't feel cool or like,
no,
interesting really... to. It feels babyish to be complaining about it. As like if Drew comes out and is like, "Oh man, he cheated me out of that." It's like, well, he did also put a pin in. You could have kicked out.
Yeah, well, because the finish of this match, if you haven't seen the show, so the finish is that there's a ref bump. And because there's a ref bump, a new ref has to come in. And because a new ref comes in, MVP also gets in. So Drew hits the Claymore and the referee gets pulled out by MVP. They do some stuff. MVP gets locked in. Yada, yada, yada. Drew gets like 2 visual pins in all of this, I think. And then Drew gets distracted by MVP again when MVP grabs his leg. And he's just like shouting at MVP. And he's like, no, you get out of here. What are you doing, you? And then Bobby rolls him up and gets the pin. His back was to Bobby Lashley. Lashley's move is attacking someone from the back. Just lock in the Hurt Lock, because at least then you could have put Bobby over. You could have put Bobby over strong and made him tap out Drew McIntyre and made him pass out again. Especially, as you say, you're trying to build him up for a big marquee match against it. You can't just put the names up on there. This made Bobby, who has been so protected, and he is the almighty, a guy they have pushed as like, no one can stop him. He is an unstoppable force in this ring. Like, no one can take him on. And here he is, completely out of character, rolling him up to get a cheap win, hooking the tights as well to get a cheap victory while MVP interferes on his behalf. It was so bad for all involved. It made Drew look crap, made no sense for Bobby, undermined the sell, and is a terrible way to end the pay-per-view. This was a failure on many, many levels.
And do you know what? Like, that was the thing. I think we were all sitting there being like, well, if they've done that finish for that cheapness, there must be something coming. Because you can't leave that sour taste in people's mouths to close the show. And it turns out that's just what they wanted to do. They were just like, F you, your time doesn't matter. Yeah. We're not even going to give you, we're not even going to give you the courtesy of just doing this. Like, it's still a distraction finish if the Hurt Lock goes in, like you said. It's like, we're not even going to give you the courtesy of doing the cool move. We're just going to do a bloody roll up. We've already had a roll up on this show.
I know.
Just do, like, yeah, I agree completely that, like, it's WWE, just it doesn't help anyone. And it's that same thing of like, they're tying themselves into these pretzels, trying to keep everyone looking strong and actually managing to keep no one looking strong. So just let Bobby win. It doesn't matter. Like, let Bobby win. It doesn't hurt. Drew can go somewhere. Drew isn't going to challenge for the title anyway. So what does it matter? Like, what are you going to do with Drew now anyway? So if Drew's not challenging for the title, whether he lost or not makes no effing difference, because he's not going to be in the main event picture. He's just going to go, if he goes down a division, he's still the strongest guy in that division because he's gone down a division. He's a heavyweight who's gone down to the mid card. Like,
we were wondering, like, because the Roman match got taken off the show, I moved to SmackDown on Fox. We were all like, well, there must be a reason for this. And, you know, Roman's whole deal is that he's the main event of the show. And like, apparently that's not just a kayfabe thing. That's also a real life thing. Him and Heyman want to be the main event of the show. So maybe they had something big planned. So we were all speculating, like, well, maybe they've got something big planned. That's why they took it off. But I really do think it is just the case that Fox were unhappy that we were promoting a match through Fox's programs to then be shown onto NBC streaming service. And they were like, that ain't happening. Put that on our show. We need the ratings bump. And it worked because, you know, they got over 2 million viewers for the first time in ages. But it also meant then that Hell in a Cell was lacking something. I just saw someone in the comments there said this pay-per-view was missing Roman. And his lack of presence on this show was really evident by the fact that a lot of this felt thrown together at the last minute, and absolutely very little of it was actually consequential.
Well, it baffles me again, like we said at the top, like they moved Hell in a Cell to put it here, to do it now, and they had nothing. Like, even the Roman Ray match doesn't feel like it warranted Hell in a Cell, really. Like, it's cool to see Ray in a Hell in a Cell match, and it's a good match, but like, it didn't warrant it. It wasn't like the moment to do it. So yeah, why move it to now to to then do it. And yeah, WWE also has all these competing interests to balance now of like what goes on what show, and it's messing with their products. It's like they need to get their house in order to put on good pay-per-views. If pay-per-views is the business model, if pay-per-views aren't the business model, stop telling us that they are. Stop making us like stay up late to watch them, because I'll happily not watch them if they're going to be a waste of my time.
And it was an hour later than it usually was as well. This show didn't finish until like 4 a.m.
Yeah, and I just think, like, to go back to Drew and Lashley, like, I really don't think that Lashley versus Brock needs the belt. Realistically,
yeah, agreed.
Like Brock coming back and just being like, I want Lashley, that's fine. Put the belt on Drew, and then Drew, you've got another match to do at your big SummerSlam thing. I think like Brock returning to WWE is a big enough event to be high up on a card and be this real showcase. Like ultimately, Roman Reigns is going to main event anyway, isn't he? So what does it matter? Like you can have two things then, rather than this one thing that you've also now ruined by doing this stupid finish.
So overall, I didn't really know what to score this show. I really didn't, because the in-ring wrestling was good, but absolutely none of it mattered. So I guess if you were to put a gun to my head and be like, give it a score, I'd have probably gone, I don't know, 2 out of 5, I guess. Like it was a show. So 2 out of 5, I don't know. What do you think?
I think 2 out of 5 is fair. I think this is the thing, is that we were talking about this last night, and it just goes to show that just having good wrestling on a show isn't good enough. When you're also selling a product that is, when you say that you're in the business of telling stories, do a story then. Come on, wow me with a story. Because if you can't think of anything to do, if you can't think of it like this is your job, like if you can't think of something better than a roll up to close your pay-per-view, why are you getting paid?
We put this up on our community tab, and 43% also thought it was a 2 out of 5 show. 31% though did give it 3 out of 5 thumbs in the middle, with 16% saying it was a 1 out of 5 show. I don't think you'd say this was a 1 out of 5 show. I think that's slightly harsh. I think the vast majority of people saying that it was a 2 or 3 out of 5 show, I think is pretty fair. Let's go.
Harsh,
there you go. Sorry,
it's just. I think it is just harsh because it is. These finishes do really affect your view of the whole match, and that's the problem, because you're just sitting there going like, well, why? I have wasted my time now. Why did I care? And I think that works on one match on a card if you're going to do it, and it's going to be like something shocking and horrible and like make you go, oh, like WWE loves a main event finish that stinks up the place and has people really up in arms. But this had multiple matches where it's just like, okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, let's get into the last of your Ultra Chats. Please do get them in using the link in the video description down below. Ding, ding, ding. This is the last call for them. Also, do pull your thumb out and give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Excuse me. Ex Machina says, rather than Drew winning Money in the Bank, maybe he just takes out Lashley on behalf of the contract holder and call them down to cash in, like Lashley did to him at Elimination Chamber. That would be quite, at least that's a nice bit of poetic justice for Lashley. That's quite nice, actually. I don't mind that.
Yeah, I think that'd be a nice sort of like round part of the story. But then you would assume, because then I guess you could also do that. Yeah, Drew wants Lashley to lose because then Drew can challenge for the belt again. So this is a way to con Lashley out of the title. But then are we going to really do another con job finish to just put someone over? For God's sake, put someone over.
Charles Berg, all I know is they broke me. Do you think Vince McMahon of old would be like who he is now? Or do you think he would try and kill his future self? Regardless, Laurie versus Pete had more build than all of yesterday's card. I know what the chat needs. A staring contest. It was... I think if Vince knew the situation he was in, I think he would probably do the exact same thing, because it is just waiting for the fans to come back. Cliff Beard says, Rhea at the end of the match literally yelled to Charlotte, I did what you would do. And Charlotte told her, you're learning. So are they telling the story that Rhea is going to eventually become the second Charlotte Flair? But it didn't feel like a DQ.
No, I think that's like Rhea should have just hit it, like even just hitting her with something harder, like something. It's just that moment was just like, that's not a DQ. That's the problem with it. It doesn't feel like a DQ because it's not in 90% of other matches. So just pick up a chair, hit her with a chair.
Wilson Simon said Jay is winning Money in the Bank. I think Cesaro should move to Raw and beat Bobby for the title. Then we get Drew versus Cesaro, which is fresh, and they'd have great matches. Jay, a few people got Jay. I mean, one of the interesting things I suppose you could say about Money in the Bank this year is that a lot of people have got a lot of names that they would like to see win. Because I've seen some people saying, the Big E could get the win. People saying Kofi could get the win. Wilson was just saying there, Jay. We were talking about Drew, someone helping Drew helping someone cash in. See, there's a lot of potential names out there.
Jay, I think Jay is a really great shout because that is so fun. Like the idea that Jay suddenly has leverage on Roman, and then Roman, who has been bossy the whole time and really keeping his cousins down, has to suddenly bow before them because otherwise it's the end of every match. He can just be yeah, that's really, I think that's genius.
Homer Star fan that said, who do you think is next for Roman at Money in the Bank? Because I have no idea. My only thought is Jimmy, but I don't know if they want to rush that story yet. Perhaps Belair. Like we were saying earlier with Belair, you just don't do a Roman match on that card. You really do hype up the two ladder matches and make the ladder matches the focal point of the show. Really, I mean, you could do Roman Ray again, or maybe even Roman Dominic. Just if you want to kind of elongate that out a little bit more. But you don't need to have. You don't need him to have a big match because his big match is coming at SummerSlam when he's facing John Cena. What he basically just needs is a small stepping stone.
I really think we're not going to get the Universal title or the WWE Championship at Money in the Bank. I think they're having the ladder matches stand as those kind of these are the main events. And then we haven't seen the US title, the Intercontinental Championship at this show. So we'll have those as well. And then we'll probably have some tag belts and that will be our event. Or they'll just do a bunch of rematches from this show that don't go anywhere. But I think keeping the titles off and saving it for SummerSlam makes the most sense at this point.
Hannah Allen said, I won't lie, I was behind LIW and Pete, but it genuinely hurt seeing Laurie lose the championship that way. Can I just say thank you, Luke and Laurie? You two are very special people, and I love you both for just being yourselves. You are amazing. Lots of love. Gem that gem. LIW for life. Well, thank you so much.
You ruined it at the end.
Yeah, Hannah, thanks a lot. Quickly, you did lose the championship last night. The longest reigning Gem that champion, a record setting with the most title defenses as well. And you lost it on a DQ.
Well, that's why I'm extra salty about that moment in time. WWE, that will go down in infamy as my least favorite WWE thing ever.
And Zachary says championship shouldn't change hands on a DQ. A shoddy one at that. Faker is still the longest reigning champ. Quillenem, that's really hard to say what we're trying to say, look like Eminem. Won in the most ridiculous technicality for Awesome for Life. Justice for Faker. Peanuts on the up. Sully for Life. Pay-per-view reactions, please. Peanuts on the up. Peanuts on the up. Yeah, it was, in fairness, Pete's prediction was that Charlotte was going to win the match. And the record books show that Charlotte Flair won that match. It was just via DQ.
Nobody won that match. Not us, not them, no. Nobody.
Nope. Absolutely nobody did. That is our last Ultra Chat. That is all we've got time for on this edition of the show. Thank you all so much for tuning in. All 1,800 of you watching this pay-per-view live reaction. 600 of you, though, however, have pulled your thumb out and pressed it on the thumbs up button. So why don't we all do that now, eh? Just give that a little thumbs up because it really helps out this channel and we massively, massively appreciate it. Please do subscribe if you haven't already to this channel. We love every single one of you. I'll be back tomorrow with Mr. Davis, Ollie Davis, that is, reviewing Raw. The Intangibles will be here on Wednesday reviewing NXT. There's no AEW review again because it's still not on Wednesday nights. I can't wait for it to come back. And on Fridays, it will be the magazine show with myself and Denise Salcedo. On Saturday, it will be the SmackDown review with the Intangibles. But until then, I have been Luke Owen. This has been your former Jam That Champion, Laurie Blake. Jam that jam, everyone. Jam that jam. See you later.